SAT grammar, there are only two kinds of tips, right? There are meta strategies for the whole section that's going to help you improve on every single question by applying them. And there are also ways to improve on certain skills extremely easily, right? The reason why there's only two tips is because there's a general way to improve overall on the section that's going to get you high accuracy for every question, right? It's a very long process, but if you segment that process and only do the most effective parts, you can get a lot of improvement. Maybe not all the way to the top unless you're only like 2 or 3 questions away from getting a perfect score, right? Then you might be able to get a perfect score as a result of this video, right? But by segmenting it, you can actually get a lot of improvement with little effort because you're only doing certain portions and relatively fast if you're doing the right things based on where you are. So hi, I'm Karthik. These are SAT grammar tips and section strategies. All right, let's get right into it. The first main one is stop using your ear. I've said this so many times, right? And I'll go into full strategy and how you can apply that. But basically, what you hear and how you say things is never 100% accurate, right? It's never 100% accurate to the specific way things are written. When everything is written, right, in written English, rules are explicit and they need to be followed exactly, right? So the way you say things has nothing to do with the way it's written and the grammar strategies and the rules that apply on those, right? So if you try to figure something out, right? If you try to figure, okay, does this sound correct, right? Does this sound right to me? Does this pause sound natural? If you're using those words and using that frame of context, right, you're leaving points up to a chance, right? You're effectively leaving it up to a 50-50 chance. So if you learn the explicit rules, you're going to be able to improve your accuracy as a result. So explicitly do that, right? This is the whole framework of this entire conversation, is that you need to learn the explicit rules and that's going to improve your accuracy, right? So watch my full grammar strategy video. I have a full video out on this on my channel that talks about deeply what my grammar strategy is, right? And if you have at least one full day, right? A full day, you don't have to be able to dedicate the whole day, or you might have school on that day and other stuff, but just a full calendar day in between your SAT, you have enough time to watch that video and learn the strategies and at least use it on one type of question and do it on your worst one so you can improve the most, right? Use the method that I talk about in that video and apply. It's just way too long and complex to explain fully in this video, so I just highly suggest you go to that video. Okay, if you have at least 2 hours, right, do this thing, right? And honestly, even if you have 1 hour, you can still use this method, right? So basically what you're going to do is you're going to learn the grammar rules and logical concepts, right? Because the grammar section uses specific grammar rules, but also uses logical concepts that have like a rigid, explicit sense to them, right? Because there's an easy, correct and incorrect answer. It's not up to choice. It's not like reading, right? But they use logical concepts, and I'll explain a couple of them in priority order. Okay, and in here, I have listed the ones that come up first are the highest priority questions because they come up the most. If you already know them and you do well on them generally on the SAT, you don't need to worry about them, right? But the ones, just like the ones that come up first, if there's one that you don't know in like the top 4 or 5, you need to just grind it out. You need to learn it at least if that's the only thing that you do, just learn it, right? Because it's just going to make your ability to do better on the grammar SAT just so much higher. You're going to just improve your score as a result, right? So relevance and purpose is that logical concept idea that you want to find something that's relevant and purposeful. There's a lot of questions on that. And same thing with transition sentences, including topic and conclusion sentences. And basically that is just your way of referencing where it is and what does it have to include, right? So you can learn those literally on Khan Academy, or a resource that I've started to really like is the College Panda blog. Because if you just look up this topic, like copy it, right, and then literally just paste it and then write College Panda and then go to his blogs, he fully explains the concept of what is correct and incorrect and gives some examples and even like a few practice questions. So just learn it from both of those resources. It's amazing. And if you just don't know generally any of these, I'm not going to read them all out, right? And there's nothing at the end there that my face cam is covering off. Everything is listed that you're able to see. The last one is singular plural consistency, right? But every single one of these, you should just try your best to learn, right? This is going to be the thing that's going to boost your improvement the most, right? It's the learning of all of these skills that boosts your improvement, not the practicing of problems, right? So if you don't know any of these skills, your priority should be the learning, and that's going to boost yourself the most. Once you do know all these skills, like start practicing, right? The one worst skill that you should practice is the one that you should practice, right? Is the one thing that you feel is your worst skill, or the one thing that you know the concept to, but you you still do poorly on, right? That's the one that you should be practicing the most. And only switch after 90%, right? So after you're done with 90% of it, right? And by 90%, I mean you do a bunch of problems and you get 90% of those problems correct, right? Either on Khan Academy or on, on whatever, right? Then switch to a different skill, right? Don't just focus on like one particular thing and then switch once you like start to get one question right. You need to get 90% of them accurate in terms of like the one that you're committing to do on that time, and then move on, right? Ranking ideas, question order, right? Question order is the most basic ranking. And honestly, for grammar, it's a little different than math and reading, right? The questions are actually designed to be able to be done in order, even main idea questions, because the evidence is going to be right there, right? They're either underlining if it's a grammar question, or if it's conceptual, even if it's main idea and it's at the beginning, they want you to reference things that have happened before, not after. They never want you to look after the certain question, right? So I find no significant advantage for you to skip certain questions, even the main ideas, unless it's a specifically hard question for you, right? And what I mean by that is like there are going to be skills you know explicitly and the ones that you don't know. As we talked about before, if you don't have enough time to do the answers explicitly, here's what you're going to do, right? You need to focus on your easy and hard rankings, right? So just from all the questions that you do explicitly know, focus on your easy and hard rankings within those. And then the skills that you don't fully know, right? Focus on your easy to hard rankings within those itself, right? So you might find that there are skills that you just don't know, but you find the question is generally easy, right? And you're able to just use your ear, and your ear is, let's say, just trained, or just like on the low chance that you've just gotten lucky, you've been able to manage to get those skills correct, right? That is still not as good as an easy question that you know the skill explicitly to, right? So that's how you should rank it, right? So if you're comparing them together, the one you know explicitly is always going to be a better thing to do first, right? The ones that you don't know, right? The skills that you don't know and the hard ranking questions, right? So they're hard and you don't know the skill. Those ones you can just skip, right? And just do them at the end, right? When you have extra time, do them at the end. Focus your time on the questions that are guaranteed accuracy, and the medium difficulty ones that might take a little more effort, but you know you can get them right if you just had that additional time. And you can honestly cut the extremely hard one, or honestly just when you have time remaining, then focus on those. That's going to increase your accuracy almost instantly, just as a result of changing the question order that you do. Okay. Final tips that I can give you. Grammar is a test of your knowledge of the specific skills. That's all it tests. It doesn't test you on anything else, like any comprehension idea. It tests how well do you know basic conventions of the English language, right? That are written English language. And on top of that, how well are you able to understand the concepts of evidence, organization, and like words and context and what they mean? Like how well are you just basically able to understand these certain facets of the English language, right? And the only way to improve is by actually learning those skills and then practicing them if need be, right? Use the learning strategy that I referenced a different video, and use that strategy to focus on at least one of those skills, right? And practice on at least one and get that one to a high accuracy before you move on to something else, so that you can actually see the most improvement, right? The most improvement actually doesn't matter if you do a bunch of the skills. The most improvement relies on doing one specific thing, right? And for elimination, right, really quickly, tone questions are a question that you can eliminate and get the answer on almost consistently, right? So there's going to be a question where it's like a word choice question, and there's going to be like two different tones generally, right? The questions that have like similar tones, you can group them. I wouldn't necessarily eliminate one because that could be the correct tone, but there's going to be groupings, right? And one of them is going to be more correct than the other. So if it's like formal, informal, just figure out the tone essentially, and a bunch of them are either going to be like grouped. So let's say like three of them are one tone and one of them is another tone, then you can eliminate the three because it can't be all three, right? But more specifically, I wouldn't exactly eliminate yet, because there's one specific key component in these tone questions that they don't talk about, is that correct definition. Sometimes the word they use are like similar, but they're not exactly the same in definition, and that can actually throw it off. So make sure sorry about that. Make sure the definition actually applies, and also the tone is also the same, right? For every main idea, question, topic and conclusion question, transition question, or find like the right evidence thing to put here that actually supports the claim, and the claim in where, the claim in the frame of reference. Every single one of those questions has this idea called the frame of reference. And basically what the frame of reference is a like thing that essentially gets you to look at a certain portion, right? So it'll be like the main idea of this paragraph, or give a conclusion sentences that summarize the main idea of the entire essay, right? Or evidence that supports this specific claim in this portion of the paragraph, right? Or in this line. That's a frame of reference. If you can figure out the frame of reference, you can always get the answer correct, right? Because the frame of reference essentially tells you where you need to look and what it needs to relate to. So make sure it specifically relates to the frame of reference every time you're doing these kinds of questions, right? It must relate to the frame of reference. Don't look at anything else except for what the frame of reference is, and make the thing apply most to the entire frame of reference instead of like any other specific point. Okay. I've said this in the math video where I talked about the tips, but essentially take action. If you want this video to work for you, actually do these things. Just knowing them doesn't help you at all. Learn the grammar strategies from that video if you have enough time. Practice a few skills if possible, right? But most importantly, don't use your ear. And I'm going to add something. Don't use your ear, and also learn the explicit grammar rules. That takes like an hour max, assuming that you don't know like 5 of them. That will take you an hour to just learn, right? If you guys are interested in SAT prep, click the link down in the description. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you learned something today.